I want to show you something. Look at my nails. I don't know if you can, yeah, there you go. Look at, okay, wait, that, ignore that hand. It's not that great. Look at this. Guess what? This is, I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. These nails were $4 at CVS, and I just painted red over them, and they look so good. Like, why would anybody spend 80 to like 120, 160, whatever, however much money people spend when you can spend $4 at CVS? Literally, that's crazy. Okay, anyways, welcome back to Late Nights with Christ. Ignore my voice. It is currently 3:16 in the morning, and I am really I'm so tired. But you know what? That's the whole point, alright? It's late, it's night, so why not talk about Christ? Especially at 3 in the morning. This is the best time to talk about Christ, so. Alright, today's actually going to be a very serious episode, despite how I sound and how unserious I am. I'm a little bit delirious. You know what's funny? I don't know if like anybody else is like this. I'm gonna rant just real quick and then I'll get into the episode. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, whenever I'm tired, people mistake me for being like drunk or something, but it's literally just me being like delirious. And yeah, I promise I'm not drunk. Oh god, that would be so disrespectful to God, first of all. Okay, anyways. Welcome back to Late Nights with Christ. This is my first actual episode because the other two, first one was an introduction to this podcast. The second one was my testimony. But tonight we are going to be talking about something very serious, which is sin. And I feel like, and I'm actually going to go in depth about it and stuff, because when I was first starting to get into Christianity, I had nobody to like help me explain sin or really anything in Christianity, and so I want to be that person to really help you all along with your journey. Alright, pull out your Bibles everyone and flip to Genesis. If we are going to explain sin, we need direct words from our Creator, for He created the law, and as we know, where there is no law, neither is there violation. Romans 4:15. And if we are going to explain the right and wrongs in Christianity, we need to start from the very beginning. Hence why I directed you towards Genesis, but specifically Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 6. Context is crucial when reading the Bible, so I want to explain this verse before I read it to you. So this is after God created the earth, after He created Adam and Eve, and around this time the earth was starting to populate. And not only were there humans on this earth, but there was also the Nephilim. Now if you don't know what the Nephilim are, allow me to explain. So the Hebrew word Nephilim is actually translated to mean giants, and it's taken to mean the fallen ones, which actually comes from the Hebrew word, I think it's pronounced Nephal, but it means to fall. Now they are believed to be the offspring of the sons of God and human women. So in simpler terms, human women and divine beings had kids, and those kids were the Nephilim. But anyways, humans and the Nephilim, they were on the earth at this time, and God had seen how much evil was in this world. So what does He decide to do? He decides to flood the earth, and the rest is history. And when deciding to flood the earth, this is what Genesis reads. So again, it is chapter 6, verses 5 through 6. When the Lord saw how great the wickedness of human beings was on earth, and how every desire that their heart conceived was always nothing but evil, the Lord regretted making human beings on the earth, and His heart was grieved. So let's dissect this. Specifically the last 12 words in verse 5, which reads, "And how every desire that their heart conceived was always nothing but evil," meaning that there is only evil, not even a speck of good within the hearts of these humans. But wait, it wasn't just the humans of this time, it wasn't just the Nephilim of this time, it is humans in general, and that includes all of us today. And how are we included in this? I'll get to that. First, I want you to imagine a courtroom. Let's say you're on trial. Now you were involved in something very, very bad. Let's say murder. I want to be clear that you didn't do anything bad yourself. At least that's what you think, that's what you believe. You never killed the person, and the only time you touched the body was to try and save them. But you also touched the murder weapon before the murder happened because you tried to prevent it from happening. So you were at the crime of the scene, you were a witness, and your fingerprints are all over the murder weapon. Now, of course, because you're on trial, you're getting asked a bunch of questions, but all of these questions need to be answered with a simple yes or no. You can't explain the context around it, and you can't defend yourself. You can only respond with yes or no. The first question you get asked is, did you witness the crime take place? You respond with yes. The second question, were you at the crime of the scene? Of course, you respond with yes. Third question, did you have the murder weapon in your hand at some point during the event? You respond yes. So your fingerprints are on the crime scene. You say yes. Your fingerprints are on the weapon. You say yes again, and after hours go by, you're finally declared guilty for a crime that you didn't commit. And it was all because it looked like you committed the crime, and because your fingerprints were all over the scene. Now, in your mind, you did the right thing. But of course, that's not how it looks. But to you, it looks like you were the hero, that you tried saving the day. The reason I put you through this scenario is because when you look at verse 5, what does it say? How does it start off? When the Lord saw how great the wickedness of human beings was on earth. Let's read it again. When the Lord saw how great. Again, when the Lord saw. What God sees versus what you see are two completely different things. What God knows versus what you know are two completely different things. The reason I used that courtroom example with a situation that was so obviously not your fault was because in our minds we think so much that we are right, that we are never in the wrong. We know it so much that it becomes the truth to us. I think that I am not wrong, therefore I am not. So we see it in one way, and God sees it in another. And because He was the one who created all of this and all of us, His way is the right way. Because God can see right through all of us. To God, He knows that the human heart is evil. But listen, although God created us, that does not mean that God also created in us an evil heart. God knew that after flooding the earth, evil would become second nature on earth. Yet He still held out and continues to hold out hope for all of us because He knows that if we just get even a tiny little taste of the love that He provides, that we will all turn from our ways. But He knows that as soon as we enter into this earth, we are all sinners, that our hearts will crave evil and they will be full of evil too. And honestly, there's no getting around that. And actually, real quick, I want to turn to Ecclesiastes 8:11 through 12. And this reads, because the sentence against an evil deed is not promptly executed, the human heart is filled with the desire to commit evil, because the sinner does evil 100 times and survives. That's not the full verse. I will put the full verse on the screen somewhere, but I want to focus on those words for right now. Think about it. We live in a world where sin is so normalized. In fact, it's romanticized. It is completely romanticized throughout Hollywood, the media, music, podcasts, books, websites, etc., whatever it is. And we get told so many lies that feed our temptation, causing us to fall into sin, causing us to act on our sin. Like sex is good for you, masturbation is healthy for you, gluttony is good when it's bulking season. Sometimes it's better to lie than to tell the truth. Abortion is healthcare. Envy is your biggest motivator to do better. Money is happiness. Whatever it is, the list goes on. And so we sin, but we never actually die. The punishment many times is usually spiritual rather than physical. And if you're not connected to God, if you're not connected to your emotional state or your spiritual state, then it is very easy to ignore your actions and write them off as not that big of a deal. The media especially makes lust seem like it's such a good thing. They make it seem like it's healthy for you, calling your sexual desires sexual needs instead of wants, saying that masturbation relieves anxiety, stress, it helps you feel better about your body, it helps you feel more control of your body. Like I said, they make lust in general sound super safe when in reality it's not. First of all, sex is not a need. Your body does not need it. If that were true, then no one would live the life of Paul. And nuns and priests, they wouldn't be married to the church or to God. And if we really needed it, our bodies would actually suffer if we didn't have it. And number 2, why would you listen to information about that from people who did not create you? God is the only need in our lives right now, forever and always. And actually, I know we're flipping around the Bible a lot, but I want to actually read a passage that connects to what I'm saying. But it's 1 Corinthians, and I think it's 6:12 through 13. Yeah, 6:12 through 13. And this chapter is talking about sexual immorality. So like I said, it's 6:12 through 13, and it reads, "Everything is lawful for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is lawful for me, but I will not let myself be dominated by anything. Food for the stomach and the stomach for food, but God will do away with both the one and the other. The body, however, is not for immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body." And then here's another version real quick, but I think this is the King James version. I'm not quite sure, so don't hold me to that. But it says, "I have the freedom to do anything, but not everything is helpful. I have the freedom to do anything, but I won't be controlled by anything. Food is for the stomach, and stomach is for the food. And yet God will do away with both. The body isn't for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body." So hopefully that helps you understand more with that aspect of things. However, I will make a video actually talking about lust and temptation, and I'll get into all of it. But anyways, back to what I was saying. We live in a world that normalizes sin so much, a world that caters to our flesh. And so naturally, our flesh will be drawn to the ways of the world more than it will be to Jesus Christ. Which is why when we are born as children of God, yes, but we are also born as sinners in this world, because our flesh will always lead us back to sin. And why? Why do we sin? Why do we do it? Well, turn your Bibles to Romans 7:15. Honestly, I love Romans so much, and I truly believe the entire book of Romans is just full of so much knowledge and wisdom and has so many answers to all of the questions that you may have. But for right now, like I said, we are at Romans 7:15, which reads, "What I do not understand, for I do not do what I want, but I do what I hate." Let's dissect this real quick. What I do not understand. This honestly goes with anything, but the most common words and most used words, I guess, that you've probably heard from Christians before, or even things you say yourself as a Christian, are "Forgive them, Father, for they do not understand," or "It's your lack of understanding." This is exactly what those words kind of reflect on, what it refers to. It refers to this. Do you think that if everyone now understood the consequences and the actual meaning of sex and the consequences of hookup culture and all of it, do you think that if they truly knew everything there is to it, that they would still partake in it today as often as they do? If they knew where it would lead them, the spiritual aspect to it, the physical aspect to it, the effect it has on them, do you think that they would still participate in it, that they would still idolize it the way that they do? Another example, if everyone knew the power of the tongue, how cussing is actually a lot deeper than we think, how manifesting is actually demonic, how what we say affects more than just the people that we're talking to, where our cuss words even root from, where they come from. Again, I guarantee you, people will stop cussing the way that they do. They will stop saying whatever they want to say. But yet we all do these things, and it is our lack of understanding that allows us to do it some more, because we do not know the power that all of these things hold. We think it's nothing, that it's just our language, or that sex is sex, or whatever it may be. Overall, if we knew the truth, which is Jesus Christ, if we knew him, and if we all collectively followed him as a society, then a lot of the evil in this world will cease to exist, or it will at least decrease exponentially. It will definitely decline. But that's not the case, and that's never really been the case. Okay, next verse. "For I do not do what I want, but I do what I hate." So there's a lot of things that I could say about this part in particular, but just to keep it very, very simple so that way it's easy to understand. How many times have you told yourself that today is the day you're going to be productive? You have a to-do list, you have everything you have planned out to do. And then you get on your phone for only a few seconds, but then those seconds turn into minutes, and those minutes turn into hours, and those hours turn into a whole night staying up just endlessly scrolling on your phone, whether that be on TikTok, on Instagram, whatever it may be. You wanted to do something, but you did something completely different that you did not want to do, that you did not like doing. Now, to go much deeper, you want to feel happy. You want to feel content and satisfied with life, with your life. You don't want to be depressed, but you are. Maybe you have suicidal tendencies. Maybe you have high levels of stress and anxiety. That's not what you want, but that's something that you do. That's something that you are right now, currently, is depressed. Or let's say you want to start speaking highly of friends and family. You don't want to gossip. You don't want to insult them. You don't want to talk behind their backs. You want to forgive them. You want to love them. But then as soon as you enter into a room with them, you go back to your old ways. You start gossiping. You start talking negatively. You start getting mad at them. You're unable to forgive them. But that's not what you want. You want to forgive them. You want to love them. But you just can't. Well, why is that? And actually, the answer is honestly in the verses that follow. So, Romans 7:16 to, I guess we could do 18, yeah. Now, if I do what I do not want, I concur that the law is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells in me. And to go a little bit further, for I know that good does not dwell in me, that is, in my flesh. The willing is ready at hand, but doing the good is not. So in all, this is what it reads. What I do not understand, for I do not do what I want, but I do what I hate. Now if I do what I do not want, I concur that the law is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells in me. For I know that good does not dwell in me, that is, in my flesh. The willing is ready at hand, but doing the good is not. A lot of people see sin as an action, but it is not only that. Sin is not only an action, it is a living thing that dwells inside of you. It is a living thing inside of you that is growing inside of you. Although this is a lot to take in, it honestly brings me so much peace, knowing that it's not necessarily me. I want to get closer to Christ. I want to reunite with Him. I want to hear His voice. I want to have visions. I want to see Him. I want to actually talk to Him full on, face to face. Overall, I want to be rooted in Him. But right now, that is just not the case, because the sin inside of me is stopping me from achieving that. So this verse, it really gives me confirmation. It really gives me clarity and assurance that my shortcomings aren't all just me. It is the sin that dwells inside of me. But for anyone who's listening, do not use that as an excuse. God knows that it's the sin and it's not you. But He also knows your intentions, because God ultimately, He reads your heart. He sees your heart. He judges you by your heart. So if you use this as an excuse to live in sin and you don't change from your ways and you think that God is going to give you mercy, then you are sadly mistaken. See this as a wake-up call and not a reason to sin some more, not a reason to keep living in sin. And honestly, for all the Christians out there who are watching this, if you are wanting to spread the gospel, if you're wanting to really get non-believers and atheists to believe in God and start following His ways, then I really suggest that you approach it in this way, where you are not attacking them. You are not telling them that they're going to go to hell. You're not going to tell them that they're failing in God's eyes, none of that. But in a way where you genuinely come at it as, hey, you have sin inside of you. It is not you, and I know it is not you. But you do have sin inside of you, and that sin is causing you to stray from your ways, stray from God's ways. Almost kind of just reassuring them that it's not them, it's not their fault, but that they should be put on the right path to God. Because then they're not as defensive, because you're not attacking them as a person. You're not attacking who they are or what they do. You're attacking the sin, what the sin does inside of them, the sin that lives inside of them. And honestly, it sounds a little crazy just going up to somebody and being like, there's sin inside of you. Like, sin is living and growing inside of you. But you know what? if anything, it gets them confused. And that is probably the best thing that could happen, because if they're confused, what are they going to start doing? They're going to start asking questions. So I really suggest coming at it in a way where you're not attacking them as a person. You're attacking the sin that is inside of them. And yeah, they still might get defensive. They still might get mad. But it's a lot easier to start a conversation with them, because then they'll be like, What sin? What do you mean sin is growing inside of me? And then boom, you have your conversation. You have that open door to just really plant seeds in others. But really think about it. Sin is like cancer. And if you knew you had cancer growing inside of you, you're not going to sit around and wait. You're not going to just let it grow inside of you. You want to act fast, because if you catch it early, then you can get it before it kills you. Sin is the same way. You have to treat it early, because sin will always lead you to death. But while you're alive and while you're living on this earth, I know I said if you should treat it early, but I didn't mean that in a way where you're too far gone. I will never ever mean it in a way, and that is not true. And don't believe anybody who ever says that. While you are still alive and living on this earth and breathing, you are never too far gone. Listen to me. You're never too far gone. Ever. The minute you were born into this earth, you were saved. Not because of anything you did, but because of what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. So again, if you are doing things that you do not want to do, that is because it is not you doing it, but it is the sin that dwells in you. Because if you did the things that you actually wanted to do, if you genuinely did the things you wanted to do, then you wouldn't walk away feeling regret, feeling shame, feeling guilt. You would feel fulfilled, you would feel satisfied, but that's not the case, is it? You walk away feeling regret, you walk away feeling guilt, you walk away feeling shame, you walk away mad at yourself, if anything, that you did the thing that you did not want to do. So please don't beat yourself up, don't ignore that, acknowledge that it's not you, and that's when the change will start. Real quick, I want to go back to what I said about how we were all born sinners. Because when I heard that for the first time, I was really confused. And again, like I said, I had really nobody to help explain any of this to me. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to dissect that a bit. Let me take you to Romans chapter 5, verse 12. So this reads, "Therefore, just as through one person's sin entered the world, and through sin, death, and thus death came to all, inasmuch as all sinned." So that's really confusing, right? Like that's really confusing, okay? When I read that, I read it like 10 times over and I was like, what? But allow me to explain. This one human that this verse is talking about is Adam. And as we know, we are all descendants of Adam and Eve. But because sin lives within us, it can be passed down. So it's kind of like genetics in a way. Sin entered the world through Adam. And I know that's also kind of confusing because, as we know, Eve was the one who sinned first. She was the one who ate the apple first. But actually, the Bible, it says that Adam was the first sinner. That with Adam's sin, that's what brought all of the sin, and he passed it down to all of us. There are many reasons that the consequences lie on Adam and not Eve. Number 1, Adam was informed about the tree of knowledge by God himself, directly from God. So Eve, she heard it from Adam, but she didn't actually hear it from God. But Adam did. Adam heard it directly from God. Number 2, Adam, as a man, naturally is the leader of the family, and his family at the time was only Eve. However, that doesn't change the fact that he was responsible for whatever happened within his family. Number 3, and we're actually going to go to 1 Timothy, and I think it's 1 Timothy 2:14. "Further, Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and transgressed." So it's pretty much saying that Eve fell into the sin through deception. She was deceived. However, Adam, on the other hand, he was not deceived whatsoever. He knew what he was doing. So he genuinely, actively chose to partake in sin. He wasn't misled or misinformed or deceived. he wasn't. It was only Eve. He was fully conscious of his decision, and he still decided to put his wife's words above God's words. So because Adam was the first to sin, because Adam brought sin into the world, and we are all connected through Adam, we are all born sinners. And because Adam was officially a sinner, along with his wife, when they had kids, that sin was passed down to the kids. Once planted, it does not go away. And we see that because once that sin was planted onto this earth, the sin didn't go away. So essentially, everyone who came after Adam and Eve got handed down this sin with them, meaning that the moment that we are born onto this earth, we are already sinners because it was passed down generation to generation to generation. Which is why it is so important to plant seeds of Christ in other people in hopes that maybe the seeds of Christ that we plant in others outweigh the seed of sin that was already planted in us from the beginning. Now lastly, I want to touch on one more topic. Like I said before, sin is like cancer. And from cancer, people will get colds, people will get the cough, people will get abnormal bumps around their body, people will get sore throat, they'll get fatigue. The list goes on. You'll get a lot of symptoms if you have cancer. However, I want to ask you something. Are those things specifically cancer? Is having the cough considered cancer? If you have the cough, if you have fatigue one day, does that mean that you have cancer? No, of course not. Likewise, you drinking, you having sex before marriage, you doing drugs, you partying, whatever it may be, that is not sin. I know. Listen to me. All of those things that you do, partying, smoking, drinking, drugs, sex before marriage, all of it, those are symptoms of sin. So what is sin? Well, sin is not believing in God. John 16:9, and it just says it's very simple. Sin, because they do not believe in me. Now, another kind of blanket statement is from 1 John 3:4, which reads that, it pretty much says that sin is the transgression of the law. Ultimately, sin is the unbelief of God. It's denying, refusing, and just not believing in our Creator. And if you have no fear of God, then you will continue sinning because you don't think that sin is a big deal. If you don't believe in the Creator who makes these laws, then sin will mean nothing to you. You act as your own God because you take away the laws that God already put up, and you put up your own laws, you put up your own rules. But once you believe that there is a God and you have fear of God more than you have fear of anything else in your life, that's when the healing takes place, because that's when you start becoming aware of what you do, aware of the consequences of your actions, aware of how deep everything actually is in this world. Which is why it says in the Bible in Proverbs 1:7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Is it starting to make sense? And once you have fear of the Lord, like I said, you start becoming so much more aware of your actions. So now, whenever you sin, at least you're thinking about it, at least in the back of your mind, you're starting to feel guilty, you're starting to feel like you're doing something wrong, it's starting to feel like it's not right, because you have that in your mind now that, this is what God says is wrong, and if I'm doing that, then I have to be doing something wrong, I have to be sinning. Instead of just going about it like it's not that big of a deal, like it's just an ordinary thing for you to do. And those feelings, along with the love and fear that you have for Jesus, those will all start to minimize the sin that lives within you, the full root of the sin, that living thing inside of you. It will start to minimize it. It will start to press it down. It will start to get rid of it as much as it possibly can be get rid of. As much as it possibly can be rid of. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. But notice how the only way you can do it is with God. One more interesting thing that I actually want to point out that proves furthermore that Jesus is the only way out of our sin, the only way out of death. Matthew 5:28-29. Everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. Then it goes on to say, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Now, of course, this verse isn't meant to be taken literally. However, there is a deeper meaning to this verse that I genuinely feel deserves to be mentioned and deserves to be acknowledged. Right before this verse goes into how we should amputate body parts, it specifically says that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. In his heart, not his body, not his mind, but in his heart. Imagine real quick if somebody really did take this verse seriously. That there was this lustful man and he knew that what he was doing was wrong. He knew that what he was thinking, everything inside of him was just really just leading him towards death, leading him towards a really, really lonely path. He knows it's a bad thing, so he actually cuts off his hands. But later he realizes that the lust isn't gone, that he can still lust with his eyes. So what does he do? He cuts out his eyes. But again, that's just not enough. So he ends up cutting out his tongue because he realized that even though he doesn't have his eyes, even though he doesn't have his hands, he can still lust with the things that he says. But again, he's still struggling with lust. But this time, it's by being able to hear lustful things. So he cuts off his ears. But nothing is helping. No matter what he cuts off, no matter how far he goes, he still can't get rid of the lust inside of him. Again, he is treating the symptoms rather than the actual root problem. So in this scripture, Jesus is saying that the only way that he can remove the lust that is growing inside of him, the lust that is really just causing him to struggle, is that he has to remove his heart, which is the only thing Jesus can do. And so for the last verse that I want to present you all with is Ezekiel 36:26. And this reads, I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I'm going to say it again. You are never, ever too far gone. Anyways, it is, what time is it? It is 4:32. I need to go to bed, and I have to upload this today because I told myself I was going to upload every other Sunday, and I procrastinated until the last minute. So, yeah. It's okay though, because I don't work today. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I love you all so much. Thank you so much. And hopefully I see you in the next episode of Late Nights with Christ. All right. Amen and God bless.